Welcome back to Educator.com. This lesson today is entering and paying bills. We're going to discuss how we can handle your business's bills. Great feature in business. We have to pay individuals or other vendors. Not my favorite thing to do. I'd rather receive the money. In business, we've got many different ways that we can take care of our bills and handle the bills. In QuickBooks, we can handle those in a couple of ways. One situation we cannot avoid is, for instance, you might be at a retailer and you have to write a handwritten check, at which point then you'll have to go back to QuickBooks, enter in the information manually to record that check. There's other examples. For instance, you might have to write a check and print it right then and there for a bill that might be due, or you have someone who's delivering something to your office and you have to write them a check right then and there. So then you can utilize QuickBooks, enter the information, and print the check from QuickBooks. Then the other scenario is certainly that when we get bills in that are due at a later date, we can use the accounts payable system. And that's what we're going to be talking about mostly in this lesson today, is the accounts payable situation. Then there's other areas where we may be able to pay with a credit card, enter in those expenses using the credit card as well. So we're going to be working currently with the bill pay or the accounts payable system in QuickBooks. QuickBooks uses the accounts payable function very nicely, so we can go ahead and set up kind of a tickler file. It handles it in the sense that it can remind us and give us reminders of what is due. So I always recommend to all of my clients that they enter in their bills as soon as they get them from the mail, enter it into QuickBooks, so that then you can put in the due date and you can keep track of your cash flow. You can keep track of what bills are due at which date, and you can manage your cash a little bit easier and better utilizing the accounts payable system, especially if you have a lot of bills and you're growing your business. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about now using the QuickBooks for accounts payable. So next, we're going to be discussing on how to use the accounts payable system. And from the lists menu in QuickBooks, hopefully you have your QuickBooks open by now. From the list menu, we're going to choose Chart of Accounts. And we're going to scroll on down to our accounts payable under the Chart of Accounts. And we're going to double click on that. It's going to open up the accounts payable register, just like a check register, just like any other register in QuickBooks. Same functionality, same information, date, the number and the type, the vendor account memo. This is going to give us a little bit of information regarding the due date, when it's due, if it's been paid or not, and the billed amount and the paid amount when we make payments. So this is going to give us a little synopsis and helps to keep track of each bill that we've actually entered along with the due date. So that's our accounts payable register. There's a lot of other reports that we get into in the next lesson, and we'll start talking about the various reports that we can look at in other accounts payable reporting. We'll hit escape once, and we'll hit escape twice to close those two windows. So now we're going to talk about entering bills. Now, when we get our bills in the mail, it's always a fun thing to do. We get our bills in the mail, we realize we owe somebody else money for the services in which they have provided to us or the products in which we've purchased. And we need to make sure that we enter in those. In this scenario that we're going to do, we're going to talk about how this company here in our QuickBooks company file, that we received a bill that created some new brochures and business cards and whatnot for our business. And they're going to go ahead and part of that bill is a delivery charge to us. And we're going to plan on pay that at a later date. We're not going to pay it right now. We're going to pay it later. They've given us a little bit of time. So we want to keep an eye on our accounts payable total so we can see what's happening. Just as a little quick reminder before we start this, we're going to go into lists. We're going to look at our chart of accounts. And we're going to highlight the accounts payables just so we can get an idea of our balance. So keep a note of what your balance is in your chart of accounts. My example has a $41,636 balance. Your sample might be a little different file if you're using your own business or you're using another sample file to work on. So keep an idea of what that balance is before we begin. So in order to enter a bill, I'm going to go ahead and escape out of there. We're going to go to the vendor menu, and we're going to look at enter bills. Okay. When we go into enter bills, it brings up our billing screen, our accounts payable screen. And here we have, this is either a bill or a credit. This is going to be a bill at this point. Under the vendor, it gives us up the upper right or upper portion of the screen here. Gives us similar to like if we're going to write a check. It's a very similar format. But this is where we're going to put in the bill or the invoice information. At this point, we're going to type in the name of our vendor who printed our brochures, and we're going to type in Willis, W-I-L-L-I-S, advertising. We'll hit tab, and we don't have that in our vendor list, so we're going to go ahead and choose Quick Add to add it to our vendor list, at which point I can go ahead and type in their address at 1234 Main Street, and it'll be Sample City, California, 90012. We'll hit tab on that, so we have at least the address that we're going to be sending it to. We're going to click on the amount. If there's a reference number for the invoice or bill that they gave to us, we can actually enter it here, enter their reference number or their invoice number. We can put that in there. We can put in the amount due is $1,500 is how much we're paying. Notice that it's going to give us 10 days from the date of today. So today's date in this example is 12/15/2016, and it's going to say it's due 10 days from receipt. So we're going to leave that as 10 days in advance, so we're going to pay it then. We can always put in here in the memo field that it's this is for brochures and business cards. We can do whatever we like there. Then when we hit tab from the memo, it's going to bring us down to the expense categories. It's going to see the expenses here. And the account, what we're going to choose is, this is printing. Type this properly. Printing and reproduction. When we hit tab from there, it's going to assign this amount of money of expense to printing and reproduction. But remember, we said that there was a delivery charge in this example. So we're going to say that it was $1,450 just for the printing brochures and business cards. And then we're going to tab on through to go to the next line. And under the next line, we're going to go ahead and click on the freight and delivery, and it'll give us the balance. So notice that it pre-filled the information. We put in up at top $1,500 for the total bill. When we change the amount down here, the amount to $1,450, it recalculated to say, well, you need to still assign an additional $50 so we can equal the $1,500 bill on total. So it gives us an idea with that. So it'll automatically do that for us. So we can always put in the memo here that this is freight and delivery service. Okay? So now that we have that all completed and filled out, looks like there we have it. Bill was received for $1,500. We broke it out. $1,450 for brochures and business cards and $50 for freight and delivery. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and click on Save and Close. You change the address for our advertising company. I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I want to update that record. So now it'll go ahead and update that vendor record with that. Now remember what our balance was on the accounts payable. So I'm going to go take a look at that by clicking on Lists, Chart of Accounts. I'm going to go scroll down to accounts payable and see how the balance increased by $1,500. So now we have that. We can look at it and see what happens, what QuickBooks does in the back end of things. When we entered that bill, it took a credit of $1,500 to accounts payable and then debited our printing expense and our freight and delivery expense. So that's what it did. It went ahead and debited the printing expense and freight and delivery expense and then credited our accounts payable. And you can see here on our accounts payable, we have that $1,500 on 12/15 of Willis Advertising. It added that bill right there, and it says that the due date is now on 12/25. So we have that. If I go ahead and gray X or escape once, it'll close down my accounts payable, and I will escape one more time to close down the other chart of accounts. So that's entering those bills. Now, assume we've had several bills come in, we've entered them just in the same way. Now it's time to go ahead and pay those bills. So now we're going to talk about paying those bills. When we go ahead and start, open up QuickBooks or the company file, a reminder window will appear and tell us whether we have transactions to complete, such as bills to pay or money to deposit. And if we don't see the reminders window when we start up QuickBooks, we can turn it on by choosing the preferences from the edit menu and clicking reminders. So you can always go to edit menu, go to preferences, and click on reminders. Let's pull this up a little bit. And we have our reminders here. And click on reminders, and we can say, well, show reminders list when opening a company file. So we want to make sure that that is checked for your preferences. And then we'll click on OK. So once you have that turned on, as I just showed you, again, that's go to Edit, Preferences, highlight Reminders, and make sure that the box next to Show Reminders List when opening a company file is checked. So when you open up QuickBooks and you have items that are due or bills that are due, it'll go ahead and remind you what is due. And then that alert will go on to the right side of the column as well of the home page. So we'll have alerts and whatnot that'll come up over here on reminder alerts down here. And at this point, we don't really have many reminders. You know, I can pull it up. It says to do notes and pay bills, etc. So that's our reminder list there. And it has a few of them there listed. Okay. So that's our reminder list. What it pulls up shows our to-do notes, money to deposit, bills to pay, overdue invoices, checks to print, etc. And over here on the home screen, it'll give you the reminder alerts. Just to let you know. So now we're ready to go ahead and pay a bill. There's a couple of ways to get into there. We can go ahead and, after entering bills on the home screen, here we can notice that the flow charts brings us straight over here to say pay bills. Or we can go up to vendors menu and click on pay bills. It'll bring us the same screen. Notice there in the top it shows that we're going to look at all bills, or we can say due on or before the 25th. Okay. But if we show all bills, it'll give us everything that's outstanding. We can also sort it by all vendors or just by one particular vendor. Say, well, how much do I owe? I know I have a lot of outstanding invoices with Bruce's office machines or whatever. We can select it and sort through who we need. We can sort it by vendor or due date or etc. This is being sorted by vendor. If I choose to due date, it'll resort it and say who do we owe first? What bill is due first? And it'll list that there. So I just resorted it to due date, and of course Willis Advertising came up first. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to make sure that it says down at the bottom, select the item that says to be printed, because we're going to go ahead and pay these bills and print the checks. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that is checked, and we're going to check the box next to Willis Advertising that we want to pay that bill. Now that it's assuming that it's the 25th of December. Why we're working on that day, I'm not sure. So, but that's our example. We're going to select that. QuickBooks goes ahead and displays the check mark next to the bill and changes the amount and the ending bank balance to reflect the payment of $1,500. So it changes the ending bank balance. If we uncheck it, you'll notice that check, the ending bank balance will change. So you check that box again and it'll reduce the ending bank balance. So you can keep track of your cash flow when you're paying your bills. It gives you kind of a running total of what your bank balance is immediately. From at this point in time, we can go ahead and select Pay Selected Bills button. And it will give us a summary of all the bills that we selected to pay at that moment in time. From here, we could actually print those checks, or print and go back and say, well, we want to go ahead and pay additional bills, or we can say print those checks. But for this lesson, we're going to go ahead and say done, because we're not going to actually print. We can go through the exercise, of course, printing checks. If we hit File, Print the Forms, we can always say we want to print checks. It'll bring up what we have ready to print. And there's that Willis Advertising. And we would make sure that we have the first check number, etc. And we can go forth and print those. If I hit OK on this, it'll select it and say what printer do you want to go to, etc. We're not going to do that at this point in time. So that's how we pay our bills. And the next section we're going to talk about is how QuickBooks records your bill payment. So we'll look at that and how QuickBooks handles that for us. From the company menu, we're going to go ahead and look at the chart of accounts. And we can get to our chart of accounts over here from the company menu. Of course, we can do it through our lists or from company menu. From this point, we'll use company menu. In the chart of accounts, we can look at the accounts payable again. Highlight that, and we can double click it. And it'll open up the register again. From here, we can see all the different bill payments that we've had. We have the $1,500 Willis. Now, we saw it before when we entered it as a bill, it had the due date, and now next to it, it shows that it's been paid in the register, that item is no longer due. These are other items that are still due and outstanding, and we can run some additional reports to see what our outstanding bills are and how many days out we are. So at that point in time, we have that taken care of. Now, under the chart of accounts, we're going to close this one down on that. We're going to look at the checking account, how it affects that. So that's the bill and how it was paid, how it affects the accounts payable. Now we can look at our checking account. Since we wrote a check, and we can double click on that, and we can see how it affects our checking account. Here we have Willis Advertising. We wrote the check. It's $1,500, and it reduces our available bank balance. And that's how it records that. If we edit that transaction by highlighting that transaction in the register and choosing up above where it says edit transaction from the register, it'll pull up that actual check. And then we can actually see the check that we paid with the bill with. It's to be printed. And we can also see that from here, it shows that a invoice or a bill pay was utilized from the accounts payable system. So we can look at that, and we can see, if we wanted to, we can double click on this and look at the bill pay. So we can look at all that. From here, we can actually go back and look at this particular bill if we wanted to. It said pay or pay. If we hit history, it'll pull up the bill payment. From there, we can actually go to that bill. By clicking history, we can go to the bill that we had entered in. So we can drill into it a little bit more. Let me show you that one more time. When we are in the check register, we have that there. If we highlight that item that we paid with the check and click on Edit Transaction, we notice down below it has the bills paid with this particular check. If we click on History, we still see that the transaction history gives us the bill payment check, but then we can actually go to the bill or the invoice that we had into the accounts payable, and it'll show us that that accounts payable was paid and the breakdown of those expenses. So I can close that down by hitting escape one more time to close that all down. So that's how we utilize our accounts payable and how we can manage it a little bit better, how we can manage our bills in the future. I always, again, recommend that when we get bills in, we go straight to our vendor and enter those bills from the vendor menu and enter those bills in so that we can have them and keep track of them. It's a great reminder. I've had situations in other clients where they have actually lost invoices when they've had a stack of paper on their desk and it's slipped behind the wall or elsewhere, and they've forgotten to pay that bill, and then they end up with late fees and charges. So, again, thank you for visiting Educator.com. We'll see you next time.